Some of you may be familiar with the Beastie Boys. They were, of course, a rap trio, and they began their life as a punk rock band, but then migrated into the developing rap scene of the 80s, 90s. Saw a lot of success, so much so that they released 8 studio albums. Some of them featured top Billboard hits, whatever, great metrics for that. But there's one album in particular that kind of stands out from the rest, and not because it has drastically higher or lower quality, but because it is purely an instrumental album, which is a very big pivot away from rap, which is predominantly about lyrics and beats and stuff like that, to instrumental, which is just no lyrics. What I'm presenting to you today could be considered the camera equivalent of that pivot. And I'm of course talking about the Rollei SL35 right here. Now the Rollei SL35 is made by Rollei, which is a German company. And the reason that I bring that up in the way that this is a pivot is because before this, the Rollei Flex name was synonymous with TLRs. After that, synonymous with the Rollei 35, which is one of the smallest 35mm cameras on the market. Now, of course, we have the Rollei 35 AF, which is a mint product using the Rollei branding. Some people might suspect that the Rollei 35 AF is as popular as it was is because it was piggybacking off of the success and the known design of the Rollei 35. People really love it. It has a very unique look to it. But the Rollei SL35 is a departure from those systems. This, of course, is an SLR, which the SL would kind of indicate. Rollei, being a German company, had gone through some ups and downs in the midst of the 1940s. There was a bit of a war going on, and a lot of their facilities and workers and stuff like that had been, let's say, acquired by a military presence in Germany, and that kind of set them back a little bit after the war, because obviously, I don't know if you know this, but Germany lost. When Rollei became its own company, it tried to get back into the swing of things. Film was becoming more and more popular, it was becoming more accessible to the average consumer. Realizing the success that bigger Japanese brands were having, that were just starting out, Rollei thought we should probably begin with an entry-level SLR system that's easy to use, compact, affordable, all of these things. Their answer to that was this camera, the SL35. Now, this did come out in 1970, so it's a little bit slow to the party, and that ultimately played into its downfall quite a bit, as well as some other factors that we will get into. But before we get too much into this camera, the review of it, why I like it, and all that stuff, I do think it's important to point out that I did get this for free. Actually, a viewer sent it in to me. There might be a little bit of bias because I didn't have to actually spend any money on it. So bear that in mind as I go into this. I just want to put my cards out on the table. I did not buy this. The person who gave this to me didn't give it to me and be like, make a good review about it. I'm making this review because I enjoy the platform, feel like it's an interesting camera worth talking about. I didn't buy it, so I feel like that should just be out there. With that out of the way, let's get back into the camera itself. There's a lot about this that I love, but let's get into some of the things I don't love. And we'll begin with this here, the lens mount. Now, Rollei opted to build on a proprietary lens mount, which is the QBM, Quick Bayonet Mount, which is a fantastic name, but the lens mount itself is a little lackluster. You see, in some way, shape, or form, Rollei, being a German company, acquired some bits of Zeiss, and they teamed together to make this lens mount and to make a series of lenses for it, which is fantastic. The optics for this are really high quality, but they come at a high cost. And where a lot of other camera companies like Pentax, using the M42 mount, then evolved into the K-mount series, those were well known and well used throughout a variety of different sources. So that meant that even if you couldn't get the Super Takumar coated optics, you could get, a cheaper Sears lens that would work on your camera. Now, the QBM never really had that life in third-party systems because it was only ever really utilized by Rollei. And the lens options you have are very good. You have the Zeiss lenses and you have the Schneider Xenon lenses, which are the cheaper of the two, but not by a whole lot. Both of these are high quality, but the cost is quite high. And if you're making a product designed for a beginner or for an enthusiast or an amateur, keeping the cost low is a pretty key component to that. And while that ultimately led to some failures of this to really take off, I think the other thing that needs to be pointed out is this on the back. Made by Rollei Singapore. There are 2 stamps that exist on this camera and the Rollei 35 and pretty much any other Rollei camera. It's either made in Germany or made in Singapore. And what you'll notice is there's a significant price discrepancy between made in Germany and made in Singapore, but there's really no quality difference so far as anyone can tell betwixt the two. It's just its origination point. So far as I know, earlier models were produced in Germany and then they moved the production to Singapore because it was more affordable, meaning that they could keep the cost lower. This is coming from a guy that bought an Olympus M1 because I thought that was cool, even though it's an OM1 just without the O on the top plate. Grain of salt there. This to me is such a small note that I don't know why there's a multiple $100 price difference. I just feel like the price discrepancy between where it's been built is it's a silly thing. There's not really a huge difference between the two. But let's get into the things I like about this camera, of which there are many. This is a camera that I've wanted to own for quite some time, but the reason that I didn't buy it for myself all those years ago is it's always just a little bit too expensive for what it is, which in my mind is a beginner SLR camera just with a bit more flair. I've never been able to fully rationalize the purchase of this because I have a K1000, I have FTBs, I have a Minolta SRT, I have Nichromats, which effectively all do the same thing, and they all have lenses that I have. The QBM system lenses are not so easy to come by, and thus the price of those can be a little bit higher and sometimes higher than the camera itself. This reminds me of the Contax S2, which was hoping to be the fundamental components of a mechanical system for the beginner, but I feel like this is achieving what the S2 dreamed it could achieve, which is slight stylistic flares to a beginner model. Breaking it down, we have a stop down button here and creates a very fun little fidget. We have a shutter speed dial with a shutter release button, which is mounted in the center, and one of my probably favorite just overall looks right here. Internal ASA system, which is very similar to the K1000. You lift up and you rotate. Flash sync speed of 1/60th. However, there's no hot shoe. There are cold shoe attachments that you can put on here, but you have your flash ports on the front here. Now over on this side, it's a little bit vacuous in some ways, but you have your rewind backdoor switch there and a frame counter. Interesting to note that the frame counter is on this side, but it is nonetheless. You have a self-timer on the front here, which is fine. There's nothing really crazy about it, but the lens release button is something I want to talk about. This is my favorite looking thing on any camera ever. The shade of red, the vibrance of it is so lovely to look at, and it's just another little pop of flair. This to me makes me think I can understand what the Leica people love about the red dot. That's how I feel about this, which is a very minor thing, and I think it goes to show my level of affordability. My price range is, this is my red dot, not a Leica. I kind of glossed over this. This is of course your advance lever, and I kind of hate it. I think it kind of takes the whole thing away from me a little bit. The backwards positioning of it is a little bit odd. Look of it is not my favorite thing in the world. The form is not great. But the range of motion is perfect. It comes within a millimeter of your stop down button, but it just feels like that's kind of where this all falls apart for me, is right there. Otherwise, the design of this is impeccable. We have these nice rounded out corners. The build of it is very solid, yet it is compact, which are two of my favorite things. It feels like a unit, but it doesn't feel like it'd be very difficult to throw in any bag that you have. And the lens itself, this is the Schneider Xenon lens, has this really interesting patina to it that I think levels it up a little bit more. Again, this is a 1.8 50mm lens. It's not bad. Zeiss lenses obviously are the more how do you do types, but I think the Schneider Xenons are still something you can write home about. The sharpness and clarity of them is worth discussing. Now, the interior of the cameras, again, kind of basic. Interestingly enough, it does have the same take-up spool as the 35 Rollei. So there's that level of brand transference betwixt the two. Now, the problem with this and with Rollei's ventures in the SLR market as a whole is that it was never really as popular as the Japanese brands. It didn't have that same name recognition as the Canons and the Nikons and the Pentaxes and the Minoltas. And while it did try to carve itself a little slot in the market with these higher quality lenses and with, you know, generally higher quality builds, it wasn't able to achieve as quick of innovation as the AE1, which was released in 1976 and is the first camera with a microprocessor. Rollei kept kind of being a little bit behind the eight ball on that front, and thus the SL35 system kind of closed shop in 1982. So it was a short-lived run, but I do think what it provided was an interesting footnote in the annals of history of film photography. It does have some boiled down simplicities to it. There's no auto setting. There's a decent-ish meter. It does have some interesting flares of classiness to it with a stop-down button that's in the front here. With the centralized shutter release button, this camera is laid out in a way that presents itself as a unique answer to the question, what would a high-quality beginner SLR look like? Because of the price of this and the price of the lenses, this isn't something I can necessarily recommend to a lot of people. When something like a KM, an SRT, a Nicormat, an FTB, an FT, a TX, a TLB, any of those cameras can serve the exact same functionality of this camera, if not more, and for a significantly lower cost and with more range and accessibility to a variety of lenses that can then lead you to create more interesting results. The SL35 does hold an interesting place in my heart. It has these touches of aesthetic beauty to it that I feel like are worth pointing out. I've seen thousands of cameras. I've only seen a few of these. That is the Rolleiflex SL35. It is a great camera that I don't really recommend you buy, but if you have an opportunity to shoot one, if you have an opportunity to borrow one from a friend, I would recommend you do so because I feel like you'll get a lot of fun out of it. I know I have. So, thank you very much for watching. I appreciate it as always. Like the video if you enjoyed, subscribe to the channel, and I will catch you on the next one. Lost feeling in my fucking foot there.